Don't Give Up Show with Jacquie Wayans. Inspiration through word and song for you.
Welcome to another episode of Don't Give Up and Win. I'm your host, Jacquie Wayans, and as usual, it is a pleasure to be with you, a pleasure to encourage those of you who have dreams that you're pursuing while you're pushing away the challenges of life. That is just the reality for everyone. Whether you're on the top of the billboards or your name no one has ever heard, everyone has to push through the pain in order to get to the goal that they're pursuing. And my guest today knows full well all about that. His name is Sherman Browne, and he hails from the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he's here today to share with us exactly how he's been able to reach his goals despite the adversity. Sherman.
Hey, Jacquie.
Welcome to the show.
Look, I'm so glad to be on. I feel like I'm on prime time right now, next level. I love it.
Awesome, awesome. I love it. I had you on Don't Give Up, my radio show.
Yes.
And as I was starting this project, I said, I've got to have people on so they can see your passion. They can see the love that you have and the impact that you're making. So I'm glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
All right, now let's get right on into it.
Absolutely.
So you were a young man in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I definitely have family back there as well in Tortola and St. Thomas, and you wanted to be a rapper. So what was it about that lifestyle, about that world that intrigued you, that made you say, that's what I want to do?
Yeah, well, you know, as a young man growing up in the islands, you know, what you see on a regular basis is you see the culture, you see the lifestyle. And there were many artists who were out there doing their thing. And I remember I would look at these dancehall reggae artists and I would see them on stage and I would say, I wonder if I could do that. And it wasn't until I got to middle school where I used to do this thing called chanting. So we would just have like a little beat. And while we're playing the beat, you know, you would put some rhymes on it. And I remember when I was doing that, people would say, hey, Sherman, you're very good. Yeah. But when I heard the cheers from the crowd and how people would talk about it, I said, man, look, I like this feeling. It was almost like a shot of dopamine. And I said to myself, well, I wonder if I could go more into this. And when I went to high school, then I started dancing in these shows and I was doing choreography and stuff like that. And at that point in time, I said, man, I love the limelight. I love how the girls are screaming. I love how people are shouting. Man, yeah, absolutely. And you know, that's what I wanted, you know, and I really thought I wanted that. But to be real about it, I think I just wanted the limelight. I didn't want the process that you had to go through.
I get it. Yeah, because that's real work. And it's real heartache that you have to go through, but it's worth it to those who want to get there.
Absolutely.
But you've got to be doing it for the right reasons. And just for the applause and the adulation, that is not enough. And I know because I also had that dream at one point in time, but it was definitely for the wrong reasons. And I'm glad the Lord has reworked and tweaked things to get me to this place where I'm doing it for His glory.
Absolutely.
And you had to go through that process as well. So here you are. You're graduating from high school, and you don't necessarily want to go the traditional route. You land in New York City. Talk about that process, how you landed here, and then what rude awakenings were you met with once you got here?
Yeah, so in my mind, leaving the Virgin Islands, in 2001 is when I graduated from high school. And in 2002, I was still in the islands, but yet many of my friends, my closest friends, had already left. Some of them went to college, some of them were in the military. And here I was back home. I was actually working in a pizzeria, and I was flipping pizza. And I'm like, look, I can't stay down here. I don't want to be known as a dance hall pizza flipper, right? Like, that's not what it was going to be. And I said, you know what? I'm going to leave. I'm going to move to New York City. Yes. Why? Because the lights are up there, it's shining. In my mind, my view of the United States was this: if I get to New York City, streets will be paved with gold, money growing off of the trees. I'll go up there and I'll be a star.
Yeah, and that's not an uncommon thought. You know,
absolutely.
I was the New York cousin, you know, that was born and raised here.
Send the barrel down.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And because of that, everyone thought that I had the easy princess life, not realizing the hardships that actually exist here. So what were you met with when you came to the Bronx?
Yeah, so when I came to the Bronx, the first thing I was met with was extreme poverty. What I didn't know when I moved up here was that the area of the Bronx where my grandmother was living was then, and still is today, the poorest congressional district in the United States. And I'm talking about the absolute poorest. So there were some things that when I got up here, I just wasn't used to, right? Like, I wasn't used to being in a building. I'm from the islands. It's nice and warm, you know, but when I go home in the middle of the winter, you know, 30, 20 degree weather and there's no heat, no hot water, I wasn't comfortable with that, you know. I wasn't used to going into buildings and seeing rats and roaches moving around. It was almost like as if I was disturbing them, you know. So when I saw where I was living, it was crazy to me, because I was living in what I considered to be extreme poverty, But then yet I saw people with the latest Jordans,
Yes.
the latest clothing.
Yes.
And what I found at that point in time is that what we find for many communities, like in the Bronx, people are out here buying what they want and then begging for what they need. And that lifestyle leaves us in debt. We can't grow from it. Nothing comes out of that. So, Jackie, I was living that same lifestyle as well. I came up here with $400. And then the first day I came up here, I spent all the money, even recognizing that I was in extreme poverty. So that reality hit me, that what I thought was going to happen, that streets paved with gold,
Right.
everything is going to open up, it didn't happen.
Right.
And I was suffering.
You know, and that is not very uncommon. What you're saying is something that's true not only for people who are traveling here from other countries, but it's also true for those of us who were born and raised here. We get caught up in this ideal of how we're supposed to look and how we're supposed to talk and walk, not realizing that the only thing that we're supposed to be concerned about is the path that God has for us and what He has planted in us. And when we find that thing and when we're able to pursue that thing, that's when everything else falls in line. But Sherman had to go through a little bit more pain before he could realize exactly what that was. And when we come back, we'll talk some more about that.
Pulitzer Prize-winning author Herman Wouk once wrote, "Within the rectilinear boundaries of 114th Street and 120th Street, of Broadway and Morningside Drive, there is a peaceful oasis of the life of the mind, defiantly independent of the surrounding marketplace racket of Manhattan. The best things of the moment were outside the rectangle of Columbia. The best things of all human history and thought were inside. If only you had the sense, you could spend 4 years in an unforgettably exciting and improving alternation between two realms of magic. That doubled magic is lasting me a lifetime." All my writings, such as they are, trace back in one sense or another to my 4 years at Columbia.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
Welcome back to Don't Give Up and Win. We have been talking with Sherman Browne about what it was like to come here from the U.S. Virgin Islands with all the dreams and hopes in the world, and it being dashed when he found out the realities and the harshness of what it means to live in a big city. And for him, it was New York, but it could be any big city. So Sherman, you got to this place where you realized you needed to make some money,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so you started to do that. Explain how you were able to position yourself and what life began to look like for you.
Yeah, so when I came here from the Virgin Islands, I only had $400 in my pocket. And going on this area called Fordham Road, heavy shopping district, I spent all that money there. One day, it was gone, it was out. And being in that situation, I know something needed to change, so I said I needed to work. And I started my first job working as a security officer, asking people for their IDs, you know, and I did it because I said, look, I don't really have any skills, I don't really have much, and I needed to do something. But during that same time of just recognizing that things weren't as easy as I thought it would be, I said, well, something needed to change. And what I did is I went and furthered my education. So I went to college, studied, got a bachelor's degree in business.
Right.
And to be honest with you, the only reason I went to school was because of this incident that happened on Fordham Road. I was walking there, and there was a young lady who grew up with me in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, okay.
And when we saw each other, it was shocking to see each other. You know, we were happy to see each other because we're both from the islands. But the situation happened like this. She asked me, hey, Sherman, what are you doing? And I said, well, you know, I'm trying to do my music thing. You know, how about you? And she started talking about the fact that she had a bachelor's degree and that she was working and all of these things were going great. And I remember it made me feel that small. So something told me I needed to change. So I went to school, got my bachelor's degree, got my first job working in New York City government. I was only making $24,000 a year working in the New York City Council. But I said, look, I'm going to take it. They had benefits as well. So I said, let me go ahead and take it. And that's when I started to make some money, you know. And but I worked very hard. I worked very diligently. If anything that I learned as a young man growing up in the islands, watching my mother, who only made about $11,000 a year, she was able to make it. She found ways to make it.
Right.
I knew that she worked hard all the time.
Right.
And if I could mimic that same behavior, I could get the same result. So working hard in the New York City Council, it took me about 2 years. I went from making $24,000 to $106,000 a year.
What now?
At
Say
that point in time, I'm like, I made it. I got it. Got money in the
Nice.
bank. Things are good. And I was making a whole lot of money. But Jackie, the problem was I was making more money, but my mindset didn't develop to the amount of money I was making.
Okay.
And what I basically mean by that is here was I was making more money, but I was still living in the same neighborhood, still living the same lifestyle. The only thing that changed is that all of a sudden I started to do the same thing that I saw, buying what I want, begging for what I need.
Okay.
So Jackie, imagine 24 years old, making $106,000 a year. First thing I went to do, I bought cars.
Oh,
Had an
cars, plural.
Yeah,
Okay.
plural, right?
Not
so
one,
I had
but
two.
okay.
Two.
All right
So I
now.
had an Infiniti M35, an Acura TL. One I was driving during the week, the other one on the weekends. It didn't make any sense. But again, Jackie, I said my mindset didn't develop to the amount of money I was making. So I was flashing, spending money, doing all of these crazy things. And at one point in time, I had to look back at it and I said, Sherman, you're making so much more money, but you're still broke.
Right.
So the reason why I was still stuck is because my mindset didn't develop to the amount of money that I was making.
Got you. So you were looking sharp.
Absolutely.
It's like the car parked in front of the projects, the Mercedes parked in front of the projects, right?
So, and let me tell you how that was, because you feel good because when I came through the block, everyone said, oh, Sherman, it's you, right? But none of them paid the loans.
And they didn't even know that there were loans to be paid, right?
Absolutely.
They're like, oh, he bought that outright.
Yeah. That's
Ooh,
what they
he's
thought.
looking good.
They didn't know I was in debt.
Right? In debt.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that gets us, right? And keeps us from being able to propel and move forward. So what started to make the shift in the mindset for you? What was one of the first things that happened that turned that light bulb on?
Well, often I think that tragedy is the situation that really propels you to go to the next level, right? Sometimes pain, and that pain that you go through changes things. So here's what happened in 2009. Sitting down there working, thinking everything is good. The elected official I was working for was up for re-election. We're running the campaign. In my mind, we have it in the bag.
Yeah.
But here it is, election night comes, and the results come in, and she loses by 72 votes. So when she loses, some might say, well, she's an elected official, she lost her job, that's what it is.
Right.
But that means my job was gone as well.
Okay.
So imagine I was making, if I went from 24 to 100,000, but then I went from 100,000 to zero. So there's an artist by the name of Drake, he said 0 to 100 real quick. I went from 100 to 0 real quick. And at that point in time, I was panicking because I was trying to think about, well, what was I going to do?
Right,
You know,
right.
I had these cars, right?
Yes.
I went and I bought a condo as well, and I
right.
still had to maintain all of these bills. And at that point in time, that tragedy was a blessing as well. But at that time is what made everything shift in my mind.
Okay.
Because I said in my life, never again will I depend on one stream of income. And more
Okay.
importantly, I need to be a steward of what God has provided to me.
Now, when did your faith in God start to deepen? Was it around this time that you?
Well, absolutely. You know, I was going to church, you know, but I was doing the regular thing, you know, being a regular churchgoer, going every Sunday, hallelujah, scream, you know, and then that's it. Go back in the week and do the same thing that you were always doing.
Right.
And at that point in time, I said, look, I got to get serious about this thing because I've lost everything right now, and it seems like everything is going to waste. But maybe there's a lesson for me to learn here. You see, when situations happen in our life, we have a choice. We could become bitter or we could get better. And at that point in time is when I said, you know what, something needs to change. And probably God is putting me through this testing for a reason. I need to be more humble, right?
Okay.
I need to spend my money more wisely.
Yes.
And I need to make sure that I am a good steward of what he's provided to me.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is that scriptures actually have more to say about money and finances and how to manage that, even more than it has about salvation, direct salvation quotes, right?
Absolutely.
So it's important for our daily decisions and livelihood, but it's also important in terms of how we can impact the lives of people around us. So if
Absolutely.
you were just staying in that debt situation, you could never make the impact that you're making now.
Yep.
Right before we go to break, why don't you talk to us about what happened with your grandmother, because I know that was a key shift in your mindset.
Yeah, so here it was. I was starting to get things together. I said I wasn't going to allow you know, my history to determine my destiny. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do things better. I started making better decisions, and I started to get back up on my feet. Started my own business, was working my business, you know, doing a lot of great work. But then in 2011, something happened. My grandmother passed away. It was October 25th, 2011. And I remember because as I walked through the halls of Mount Sinai Hospital and I went to see my grandmother ever so often, there was something that was happening with her That really bothered me. You see, every time I would talk to my grandmother, she would start telling me about all the things she could have done, would have done, and should have done if she had more time.
Right.
And there was an important lesson that I learned at that very moment. You see, what I find is most people don't try to live until they're about to die.
Right.
And they start thinking about all the things they could have done, the impact they could have had, how they could have changed the world. And I remember my grandmother looking at me and saying, boy, as you are here, make sure that you don't waste your time, you do what you need to do, and make sure you go out there and make a better life for you and for your family. The one thing my grandmother never said when she was about to die is that she wished she worked more hours. She never said that. She was talking about all the impactful things that she could have done, how much more time she would have loved to spend with family.
Right.
And that really shifted my mindset totally. I said, you know what? I got to live this life, the rest of this life that I have, the limited time that I have on earth, I have to live it to have impact.
Yes.
And the problem that most people have is that they focus on income first. But I've learned that if you focus on impact, impact will give you influence, and influence will bring you income.
I couldn't say it much better myself. That is what you need to do. The Lord has put us here to have impact. Don't worry about the income. Yes, we want to be able to have an impact in all areas of people's lives, but you have to have purpose first. When we come back, we're going to hear what Sherman's purpose is and how he's making it work for everyone. Talk to you soon.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science. After that, I'm going to get my law degree. Then I'm going to come back to Detroit, boost the economy, become the mayor or something, try to make the situation better for other people. I feel like I owe it to the city. I'm determined. It's going to happen. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
Ignorance on fire is far better than knowledge on ice. You could write that one down too. Ignorance on fire is far better than knowledge on ice. Some who know everything, could speak the right language, could make everything look good, but they're on ice. They don't move. They don't make things happen. But there's some of you who are going to have low potential and no one's going to see it. But because of your passion, your desire, because of your fire, you're going to go out there and do whatever you need to do, and you're going to be a solid citizen. And understand this, as you go out there as officers, as you go out to take it to the next level, you're going to have to push through the pain. You're going to have to push through the pain of the rejection when you go out there to go apprehend someone. You're going to have to push through the pain of the resistance. You're going to have to push through the pain of the ridicule. All the things they're going to say about you. They're going to tell you negative things. They're going to talk about you. They're going to say, peg this, that, and the other. And you still have to be the game changer. You still have to be the one to prove that that's not who we are. That's not who we stand as. We are on a different level. We are game changers. No pretenders. No players. We are performers. We get it done. Because lives are depending on you. The people are depending on you. And with all of it, you're going to have to push through the pain.
And we're back with my guest, Sherman Browne, who just made some really powerful statements. But one of the things that I feel is very important for you to know is that there is a process for everyone to get from where you are to where you want to go. And sometimes that process is ugly, and sometimes it's painful, but you have to push through in order to get to the other side. So, Sherman, share with us, what would you say were some of the points that were particularly painful for you, even as you had the mindset shift and you were doing the right things, but you still were, feeling the growing pains, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you have to make a shift, and especially when it's out of what you're used to doing, it's going to become painful. I like to say it like this. Most people don't change until the pain of being the same becomes greater than the pain of making a change. And if you want to get to another level in your life, there's a process. And the price of that process, or the price of your progress, is going to be pain. So the pain that you go through. So there was things that I had to go through. I had to become more disciplined. There were things that I used to enjoy doing that I had to stop doing. And having to stop doing those things became a very painful process, right?
Now, let's be specific. You talked about having the 2 cars, one for the week, one for the weekend.
Well,
you talked about going out on the weekends
absolutely.
and living
So
large.
the going out had to stop completely. eventually I had to let go of the cars. I kept one car, you know, and the car ran very well, right? But I had to downsize, right? Even in my regular spending, I had to change from that. Look, I didn't have any savings. All the money that came in, I spent. I remember there was for over a year, I was paying $100 a month to Bally's, and I never knew the money was being taken out, right? And that's the type of decisions that I had to make to say, you know what, I gotta hone in on this. I gotta start to look at what I'm doing and make better decisions. And that's a painful process. But when you go through that process, you grow, you get stronger, you get better. And it's absolutely necessary, because if you're going to get to the next level in your life, you're going to have to become more disciplined. Here's the other thing that I went through. There were some things that I wanted to do in terms of my business, in terms of expanding. And one of the things that I found is that when you talk about the price that you're going to pay, the pain that you're going to go through, you're going to go through the pain of resistance. You're going to go through the pain of ridicule. You're going to go through the pain of rejection. And all of these things are going to hurt as you're going through it, but you got to remember why you're doing what you're doing. And when your why is on the line, you're going to grind, you're going to do whatever it takes, but you're going to go through that process. But the thing that could help you to overcome that process is discipline. And what I found is that the more disciplined I was, disciplined financially, disciplined personally, disciplined professionally, the more disciplined I became, the better results I got.
Awesome. Yes, the Bible talks about being able to rule your own house, your own discipline, your own self, right?
Absolutely.
You have to be able to man this. How else can the Lord entrust you with greater things if you can't manage the small things, right?
Absolutely.
So we have to be faithful in that. And I'm hearing what you're saying. The point you made right before the break was about having a passion for something greater that's beyond just the income. So what did you discover your passion to be?
Well, here's the thing. It's funny, right? Because the class doesn't always seem like the calling. Sometimes you're going through things in life and you don't recognize that you're being taught at that moment. So here it was, I was trying to figure out, how could I have more impact? How could I do more things that goes beyond me? I just learned this important lesson from my grandmother, and I have to make sure her legacy lives by making sure that I share it with others. So I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna start a video series. And in that video series called Aim High Insights, I would put out weekly videos. And these weekly videos would be there to stir your ambition, your inspiration, your motivation, and to push you to pursue your dreams, regardless of what the situations are. And what I noticed while I was doing that is that people would call me and they would say, hey, Mr. Browne, we just saw your video. We would love you to come to speak to our students. And I was surprised at that. So I would go in, I would speak to the students. And I remember one day a person came to me and said, sir, are you a motivational speaker? And I said, what's that? What are you talking about? He said, yeah, you know, one of those people who go around the country and they speak and they, you know, they change lives. And I said, what are you talking about? I've never heard of that before. But I went and I started to research that. And while researching, I saw people like Jim Rohn and Les Browne and Anthony Robbins. And I was seeing all these people and I said, wow, these guys are having tremendous impact. Why not do that? And I started going around the country. I was speaking at schools, at colleges, at churches, at these different areas, spreading this message that, you know what, you need to find your passion. You need to pursue that calling. Do more for the calling that you were made for than for the job that you get paid for. Don't settle. Find ways to take your life to the next level. And as I went around the country doing this, what I noticed is I said, you know what, the speaking is good. But information without application is only fascination.
All right.
And what I found is a lot of people were fantasizing. They heard the information, but they couldn't apply it.
Right.
So I decided I needed to do something that was more impactful and more powerful. And that's when I started the Aim High Empowerment Institute to serve as a success, retention, and graduation initiative where we work with young men, academically focused but life skills driven, to help them develop competence, confidence, and character. And that was a game-changing moment of my life.
Now's time for the Don't Give Up and Win takeaway moment.
Today's guest talked about a lot of important things, but I want to key in on a few things that touched my heart, and I think they need to be reinforced. And one is this issue that when you are starting your goal, when you are starting to make changes in your life, when you realize the things that you need to target and fix, and you start to make the adjustment, guess what? You might experience some rejection. Some friends may not understand why you can't hang out like you used to, why you can't party like you used to. When I was going to Columbia University and I was a mom of 3 kids working and doing a lot of other things, I couldn't contact people the way I used to. I had to make certain changes, and that's difficult for people to understand sometimes, but you have to keep your goal and your focus. The other thing I want to mention to you is that, you know, you have to realize that there are things that on the outside, people are never going to understand what you're going through on the inside, how you're pushing through the pain. You know, Sherman talked about the Aim High Institute and how he was able to put up these weekly insights. But in the beginning, 10 years ago, he had maybe 40 people, 50 people, but now he has thousands of people listening and looking at what he does. So you have to start somewhere in order to wind up where you want and desire to go. You need to push through the pain. And one of the things I always say on these shows is that, you know, Romans 10:9 and 10, that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's where the power for moving forward really comes from. So I just wanted to leave you with that today.
I come from a big family. I'm the oldest of 6. To me, being the first person to go to college, it's like setting a standard, you know? My little brother is 8 years old now. I challenge his curiosity. I challenge him to dream. I have to paint a picture for him that he can look up to and live up to and possibly be better than. My name is Jacquie, and I am your dividend.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
Now, Sherman, you may not remember this, but we met about 10 years ago. Time really does fly, but it has been about 10 years, and you were just beginning the work then. And what I like is you had a special heart for young men.
Yes.
So talk about the Institute now, and then also talk about how you're expanding with conferences and things of that nature.
Absolutely. So the Institute was born just out of the fact that I was looking on the news, and every day you turn on the news, no matter what you look at, there was always these negative things that they would be saying about young men of color. And it was over and over and over again. And at some point in time, I got tired of it. I said, the more you talk about the problem, it doesn't change your problem. You need to come with a solution. So I said at that point in time, well, while everyone else is going to focus on the crisis, let me start focusing on the promise. I believe our young men have promise. I believe they have potential. And I said, let's go out there and start working with young men, helping them to understand the decisions that they need to make to take their life to the next level. But rather than just trying to correct them, let's first connect with them. You see, the problem is, Jackie, most people try to correct without connecting. And I said, how could I find a way to connect with these young men so that we could show them a better way, put them in front of people who have been successful, who've accomplished things in their life, so that these young men could understand that their geography doesn't have to determine their biography.
Wow, you have said a mouthful. And for those of you who want more of that, I encourage you to find him on his website. In fact, he is going to have a conference coming up in April. I went last year for the first time. It was awesome, very affordable, and well worth my time. So I encourage you to check it out. Until next time, I want you to go ahead and be your very own best hero, because the greatest hero of all said you were worth it when he gave his life for you on the cross. Have a good night. God bless.
It's not